I remember the first time that my parents caught me watching porn. Super awkward way to start this episode. Sorry, mom. But I remember the day. I remember the time. I remember how old I was. And it was a very intense, awkward conversation that I had with my parents, especially my dad. I was 14 years old. I honestly just wanted to not talk about it and never talk about it again. But I specifically remember my dad saying, if you go down this road, if you keep doing this, watching this, it will destroy your life. I remember those words very clearly. But looking back, I wish my parents would have gone more specifically into how it's going to destroy my life. As a 14-year-old, as a teenager, when somebody tells you not to do something, the jerk response, no pun intended, I guess, is to do that thing. It's this rebellious, curious nature that we have to go against sound judgment and to just go do the thing that we were told not to do. And I wish for a lot of things, we had the conversation of why. You know, if you grew up in a house similar to mine, your parents said, do this. And you say, why? Why should I do it? And they said, just because I told you to, shut up and do it. That is the only reason that you need, or else, there shall be consequences. There was never there was never the discussion or the back and forth of why you should not do this, why you shouldn't go down this road. This is how it's going to affect you. And I don't say this to put blame on my parents or anyone else, because simply we didn't know at the time. This was when the internet was just coming out, and there was not enough study and research to see how phones and social media and pornography and how just addiction to the internet, which wasn't even really a thing back then, would affect the mind, especially the mind of a teenager. I was 14 when I was first exposed, but the average age of exposure now is 9 to 11 years old. And when you think about a 9-year-old, if you've ever talked to a 9-year-old, there's just this sense of naivety. There's just this sense of wonder about the world. They just want to be involved, and there's just something so pure about a small kid. But then when you think about that kid being exposed to something like pornography, it really does make me sad. It really does break my heart now as an older guy when I think about that. And I look back and like I said, I wish I had the conversation with my parents of why. I wish it was explained to me why, how this is going to affect you, literally how it's going to affect your mind, your thoughts, your body. Once again, this is not to put blame on anybody. Much of this was not known. Much of this research wasn't known. But today, and for the next few days, that's what I want to get into. I want to talk about the why, the how pornography affects the way we think, our minds, our lives, and our souls. To get down into very specific things, and today I want to start with how it affects our time. But before we do, welcome to the God Made Man podcast. My goal with this podcast is to model a life not self-made or man-made, but God-made. When I tried to research the average amount of time somebody spends in a day watching porn, I got a variety of responses from 10 to 20 minutes a day to several hours a day. And, on days 50, 51, 52, we've already talked about time, specifically about Ephesians 5:12, where it says to make the most of our time because the days are evil. Therefore, don't be unwise, but be wise, knowing and trying to understand what the will of the Lord is. Practically speaking, when you think about the amount of time you spend a day, a week, watching pornography, giving into that lust, it takes a significant amount of time. From the time that the thought comes into your mind, from the time you are triggered, to searching on social media, researching, carousing around, trying to find the right video to climax off to, between the time of inception of the thought to the final act of climax being completed, I feel like I'm talking in very scientific words just to explain. You get tempted and then you jerk off. Between those two periods of time, it takes time. There is a significant amount of time that could pass between that. And even if you say, oh, it's only 10 minutes or 15 minutes a day, that's still 10 or 15 minutes per day. When you add it up over the week, over the month, over the year, it's a significant amount of time that you are investing, because you are, but you're essentially giving it away to something that will never give you anything in return. In fact, what it does is it increases that desire for lust, so that the next time it's a little harder. What you watch is a little bit more intense. It has to be in order to maintain that same level of dopamine. You're giving your time into something that is not giving you anything in return. In fact, it's stealing it. When I am tempted nowadays, I quickly have this thought in my mind of, okay, you're being tempted. This is going to take such and such amount of time out of your day. What is something else that you can do with that time? You can read a book. You can read the Bible. You can pray. You can go for a walk. You can drop down and do 4 sets of 10 push-ups. Whatever it is, even if it's just sitting there in silence, it's a better use of your time. And when I think back into my 20s, as I'm 31 now, looking back into my 20s, my deepest regret, my only regret really, is the time that I wasted, giving it away to not only lust, but to just things that didn't add any value into my life. And now being older, one of the resources that we lose a lot is time. That's something we'll never get back. And I'm in a stage of my life now where I'm trying to make the most of my time. It seems like time is so scarce every day. I have to be very vindictive with how I spend my time. Some days are good, some days are not. But giving it over to something that is draining my energy, actually, draining my time, and not giving me anything in return, it's something that needs to be cut out. Especially something as addictive as pornography. It steals your time. And in essence, it steals your life because days go by, months, years go by, and you have nothing to show for it. You've been giving it away to something that has given you nothing in return. In fact, it is negatively affecting your mind, your health, your body, your relationships, your family. Ephesians 5 verse 15 says, "Be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil." Other translations say, "Making the most of your time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." To make the most use of our time, we have to go back to the one who gave us the time to begin with. The Bible says God can redeem our time. As we understand the will of the Lord, as we understand what He is calling us to do, we will not only be more aware of what we need to do with our time, but the things that drain our time. A lot of times, as we get more and more mature in our Christian faith, it's not really this is good, this is bad. The question becomes, this is good and this is great. I want to do what is great. So that means even cutting out good things from our life. Things that are positive, that still are not a good use of our time, need to be removed. As we draw closer to God, He will convict us more of how to spend our time, the things that drain our time, the people that drain our time, and what we need to do about it. He will give us the wisdom to make the right use of our time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. As I said, there are so many ways in which pornography affects us, and this is the first day of looking at how it affects our time. Join me tomorrow to see how else pornography can affect us. See you then.